Stefan. Thank you.
All right, Dan. No bother.
I'll probably have to split that into two parts. It's that good.
Yeah, my wife and girls were away for a walk at 1:20 and one of them after coming in and kind of looking as
Are
if
you
to say,
still
"You
on it?
still
I
talking?"
know. I have the
There you go.
I have the three.
Time flies.
And time really did fly. Chatting to Stefan White about his career was something I always dreamed of and wanted to do. And when it came about, I was absolutely delighted to learn and listen and then share the chat with my favourite Louth footballer ever. In the first of this two-parter, we talk about his heroes, how practice made perfect. And we talk about his original club, the O'Connells, and then Blayney Fogs, the team he moved to. You'll notice in this podcast and throughout the two podcasts, both of them, Stefan's father, Stefan White, features strongly in them. Why wouldn't he? Like, he's a Louth legend, All-Ireland winner, member of the team of the Millennium, and most importantly though, a hugely influential figure in shaping Stefan's career. So I'm really excited to want to get going and get into this. We're really excited to share this with you. But here's a Stefan White introduction first.
On the line is a man I used to emulate in the garden. My favourite player growing up, Stefan White. Stefan, thanks and welcome to the Loud and Proud podcast.
You're welcome, Dan. Good to hear from you.
Did you notice that growing up when you were playing, Stefan, that you would have had lads playing emulating you in the garden?
It's probably good to hear that, Dan. Thanks very much. It shows you how old I am and how young you guys are still playing. So I still would have, yeah, but probably when you were playing, you'd have dad coming up to you saying, trying to get young lads to chat to you and that, and saying, look, he emulates you and blah blah blah. But when you hear it back, it's kind of something that's obviously I would have done when I was growing up. I would have emulated footballers both in Louth and further afield and kind of watched them on TV. So I would have heard it numerous times, and it's nice to hear those things. And it's the satisfaction it probably gave to younger lads was similar to the satisfaction I got from watching my heroes in years gone by, and you still look at them. But it's good to hear.
Who was your hero growing up?
I had a few, really and truly in Louth, I have to say. And I was lucky enough, I got to play a couple of years with him towards the end of my career. Was Aidan Wiseman was one of them.
Yes, yeah.
I thought Aidan was a brilliant player. He played with Leinster. I remember seeing him play with Leinster with my dad over in Breffni Park for Leinster against Ulster. He would have been one. My cousin Jim McDonald, he'd be a brother of Ollie's. I remember Jimmy playing they had a fantastic under-21 team in Louth at that time. We're in the late 70s. And then further afield from a national perspective, I had numerous favourites. After obviously Louth, Dublin would have been a team that would have followed. And I had great admiration for them. I would have really loved the likes of some of the Dublin. My dad would have always said when we were watching Dublin, even in Croke Park, that when I was trying to be a free taker, watch the way that the likes of Jimmy Keaveney would have practiced his frees even in before matches, and he always would have tapped over a 14-yard free right in front of the goals. And I remember saying a couple of times, Dad, why would he not? And he said he would just probably do that to kind of gain his confidence, and let him practice 2 or 3, maybe a few yards out. And still to this day, if I'm still doing a bit of coaching at the minute with underage, I do kind of try to look at that and say to them, try the ones very close to the goals, get your confidence up. It's the easy ones that are missable rather than the far out ones. Nobody expects you them. So like the Jimmy Keaveney would have been, Matt Connor would have been a huge favourite of mine. He was really, he was probably one of the most naturally gifted with everything, and unfortunately his career was cut short with an accident. But in saying that, he achieved so much with Offaly, and he was a real. So players like that, I was probably, because I was a forward, I was always looking at forwards and trying to look at things and maybe watch what they would have done. So there were years gone by, and you'd still watch them even in the matches that have been replayed now on TV. You would still look at some of them and say, God, the football has changed over the years since those days of, say, 80s and late 70s, 80s. But some of those players would still have been recognised as true greats. And obviously, in more recent times, I'd have to mention Peter Canavan. He was a fantastic footballer from Tyrone. Probably, I'd say he was definitely in the top 2 or 3 that I've ever seen. a natural footballer left and right. For his size, he had everything. But there was numerous ones, but those sort of individuals would have stood out from when I was starting out and young.
So you would have been a student of the game even as a youngster.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I would have watched things like that, and maybe lucky enough when you get to Croke Park just to see what way, especially the teams that were going very well, like your Dublins or Kerrys. You'd always try to say, God, your biggest achievement would be, God, someday you try to play in Croke Park like they would have done. So I would have watched things they would have done, and tried to maybe practice things they would have done when you'd see them. And you were looking at, I was only maybe 10 or 11, but they were maybe inter-county players, maybe mid to late 20s at the top of their game. So you'd be trying to watch and pick up anything that you could have used then through the years from them.
And where are you practicing? Where are you practicing, Stefan, as a young fella? Are you going down to the Grove? Are you kicking around the garden? On the
No, I would
street?
have. Well, yeah, the Grove would have been obviously because it was so close to me, and then in the backyard. Most Sunday mornings, I would have. That time, I probably would have. Another time went to mass and Saturday evening, and then if not, I would have scooted off to the garden on a Sunday morning. But between the backyard and then obviously you wanted to get into a football field. Obviously, it was just a couple of 100 yards was up to the Grove from me, which was handy. It was always open. It was never the case that it was never feasible to get access to it. We probably pitches now they're probably not as accessible, but certainly in those years it would have been just a handy wee walk up the road to the Grove. And it was quiet up there because obviously the main road was there, but there was some mornings used to be ideal for that sort of thing.
Are you going on your own, kicking frees, or is there any other boys?
No, funny enough, there used to be a couple of neighbours who were younger than me across the road. The Counties, Brian used to be one, and Damien, and they used to toddle along, and I'd get them to kick the ball back out to me on occasions when my dad wouldn't have been there, or else if he was there, he would have been kind of trying to help, trying to do things. But it was a great, you were getting an insight into things, and then practicing things, and just it's still to this day. I'd say if you ask anyone that's playing currently, it's just all practice and more practice. I think there's a lot of emphasis put maybe too much away from the ball and the actual basics. I think a lot of coaches are probably going back to the basics, and I think if that's the way I used to kind of look at it and say, right, well, if I have the basics done, I'll have a wee chance.
Yeah, because you notice that with skill level, you think, oh, lad's just a natural footballer. He's natural. He never had to work in his game. Like like even you hear Paddy Keenan, like he looks the most natural footballer, but firsthand that Paddy was a savage to train on the skills, and it's the same with yourself. Like you're getting the reps in as a youngster.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would say natural footballers, but then you have to. I'm sure Paddy's the same, and any player you would have spoken to down and watched. Everybody has to keep. I think you have to keep at it and practice these things. I was always right-footed, but I would have practiced in the garden kicking with my left foot, and maybe Dad, I remember loads of times at different times coming in back into the kitchen on a Sunday morning, maybe tears tripping you, and saying to Mum, this man, Daddy's not letting me kick my right foot. He was trying to say to me, like, it's because of the fact that everybody will think you're on the right and then you'll be able to kick it with your left. So be it, doing the simple things. I'm sure, I remember years and years ago my dad saying about Mick O'Connell used to practice catching the ball at the gable end of the house. He used to throw the ball at the heart and catch it. So that was his timing from kick out. So there you go. There's somebody that used to practice with a ball and a gable end, how easy it is and how natural a thing like that is. But I think there's some people can probably have natural ability, but I think there's an awful emphasis, and there has to be an emphasis on the skills and just doing the basic things right. And if you do them and repeat them, it's like everything. It's like maybe studying and bits and things like that. If you just do the basics and keep doing it, it'll some part of it will sink in now. In skill factor, it'll stick to you.
Well, the left foot stuck to you. We'll get to that in a minute. The practice on the left. But was there pressure growing up? Like, was the 57 team, like your father, Stefan White, esteemed player with Louth, All-Ireland winner, 4 Leinster titles? Is there pressure? Is the 57 team knocking about the house? Are they in your stratosphere?
Yeah, there was always, I suppose, when Dad was so steeped in GA, and his life evolved around GA, and I'm sure people like him in growing up, Gaelic football was first and foremost, and that was it. It came probably. I know he was very much a family man, but it was Gaelic football first, probably work and family afterwards. I don't know what order the work and family would have come, but certainly the Gaelic football was up there. They just those sort of people, and probably it's steeped in an awful lot of traditions and in an awful lot of households, whether it be Louth or any other county. It was Gaelic football. That was it. There was nothing else. Other things just took a back seat. There probably was pressure. It's hard to know. Obviously, when you start playing, then you're going to be compared to. In our house, you're compared to Dad, even though he was a back, I was a forward. But in the 50-70, I think when all the teams, until someday, hopefully that we're all here to see it, that they will emulate the 57 team. I think the reason that they emulated was probably it was the greatest era for Louth football in an awful lot of minds, probably the greatest ever. Obviously, they won the All-Ireland, but they had very successful years. So I would say in a lot of households, whether you are related or not, everybody would look back in the 57 team and compare individuals. We had it recently there with people picking teams and the top 50s and all this sort of thing. So it's in a way it's good for people, and in another way, would it bring extra pressure to me? It probably did, and then you're always trying to do things. But then I would have turned around and maybe did things that Dad didn't emulate, and I was very lucky to do. And he would have said that to me, but he has his Leinsters and All Ireland, and unfortunately, nobody in the era of when we played, and since 57 era, has got the opportunity to do that. And it's a shame, and I'm sure the 57, the few of them that's left, are looking back and saying, I know 2010 was one that probably could have been emulated, but certainly in the 90s, we kind of felt that we possibly should have contested at least one, if not a couple of Leinster finals. But there's always going to be comparison now, I think, to the 57 team, because I think that's the era that a lot of people would have looked at and said it was the most successful. So you will have comparisons, unfortunately.
And did he coach you, or were he just guys over was the underage structure as tight as it was now?
I probably would have relied on Dad an awful lot. He obviously, with his experience, he's a great way of, especially when things, whether they would go well for you or not go well for you, and even in underage, and then when you go to play adult football, he would have come back, after you come back to the house, he would have said, I wouldn't have done that, or simple wee things about maybe catching a ball or trying to flick it up or things like that. He would have maybe used his experience, and then he would have always said to me that he was always a very clean footballer, so he would have never got involved. But he said that at different times he would have had to, as he would have put manners on somebody, but he would have done it very cutely. And he said, anyone that off the record, if he wanted a slap in the mouth, he would have got it, but it wouldn't have been an intentional one. It would have been done maybe going for the ball.
In
where
the fairness of the game,
Yes. Would you have
listened to him as a young fella, Stefan, or would you just?
I would have done. Yeah, he was at different times. You would have said to me going up, he said, "You didn't listen to me that day, or you did." And remember, I told you this. He wouldn't have come back and said those things to me, but he would have been very much like, kind of take you off and say you were stupid that you didn't do that, or you were stupid that you did do that. What did you do that for? And type thing. So he would have he wouldn't have been a man that would have kind of been drilling at home, but he would have just made you aware of it, and he'd be kind of for the benefit of yourself. He wouldn't be trying to confuse the issue or criticize. He was all trying to help you along, which was great help. If you're coming back to a house whose mum and dad weren't interested in football, then you can see that, and that unfortunately happens in a lot of cases.
I was just going to say
you don't have a football backing. I
was just going to say that, if you're like, it's so important. Like, it's even mothers now. You can see that the more involved they are with young fellas playing football, the more likely they're going to play.
That's right. Yeah, and I think when there's when you look at it, when there's a settled house and a football backing house, and especially in a parish end of things. It's slightly a little bit different in the town end of things, in your bigger towns and throughout the country. But I think in a parish end of things, it's people are involved in the club, whether they be involved in ladies underage football or ladies football or whatever it is, or committees or whatever. When there's an involvement on the female side of things, and there's more emphasis on that now than there had been, say, 20 years ago. That's a big help, especially the younger players growing up, because if they get a footballing if football's been talked in the house, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
You know, it helps the child on. You know,
it's kind of it's the way it is now, and you notice with the COVID, the way it was. It's if you have that habit in the house, it stays. It nearly stays with you for life. You know, you want to.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when you're getting on the senior team or when you're pushing on and all that sort of way. Was soccer ever on the cards growing up for you? Were you a talented soccer player?
I did. I played a bit of soccer, not to the extent I would have liked to. I played a few years. I played even when I started living down in the north here. I came and played with a soccer team, and we had there were Gaelic and soccer players. We used to mix in, but from growing up, it wasn't really thought. I would have liked to have played more soccer, even at underage, because you know you don't know what it would have maybe led to. But obviously, Gaelic was the first thing in the house, and it was always going to be that. And it was never. It was probably similar to houses that would have been soccer orientated, and somebody playing smaller, maybe Gaelic. Would I have liked to play it more? Yes, I would have. I think growing up, I went to school in the Christian Brothers in Dundalk, and it was Gaelic only, whereas the Marist was the other school in Dundalk, and they were a little bit more towards soccer and then Gaelic, whereas the other way about. So if there had been a more happy medium, but then you know you were spending a huge amount of time playing Gaelic anyway, and you would have wanted maybe 10 days in the week rather than 7 to do what you were trying to do, because you were playing with the school, trying to play with your club, you were training, and then trying to get a wee bit of education as well, which wasn't always helping, you know, so difficult.
And come here, with your father, he would have played for Cooley in that underage. You're no relation to any of those, like Brian White or Keith White, all of them?
No, there's no relation. Funny enough, and probably people have said it to me at different times, especially when Brian was playing with the Louth seniors. You know, he had mentioned that people had mentioned me as that guy, a first cousin or second cousin. I said no. The only connection I would have had was with Sean White, who was St. Pat's Lordship.
Yeah.
Sean would have been a first cousin of mine. Sean's dad and my dad would have been two brothers. So Sean played for the county, played county minors, played county seniors for a couple of years, but Sean was always big into the farming, so it kind of took a back over. I think when he got his championship captaining the Pats, the first one, he felt he had reached the promised land, so it was a bit of a come down from that. But
he was a good little player. He was good little full forward.
Yeah, Sean was good. He was hard as nails, really tough son of iron, big, great left foot. You know, so he was. As I say, he probably, if he had maybe he was never really too bothered about the football. He just played, and he was well fit to play it.
He was. Yeah.
He once he got to the promised land that he had in Lordship, that was it. It was all, anything extra was a bonus. You know, he didn't mind after that. You know.
Yeah, no, I remember that in 03 he destroyed us. We were reigning champions. And he destroyed us below in the first round in Haggerstone. And I didn't know him. I was only young for the time. Yeah, and he fairly well made an impression on me. But you got your first impression with a junior medal with the O'Connells. You won a championship. But
I did. I won a championship in '83. We were beaten in the final in '82. And we beat Dunleer after Lanlair, as they were called then. Neighbouring parish, great rivalry. Remember very little about it. I was just turned 16, so I was pretty young at that stage. But it was great. I enjoyed my time with the O'Connells. I remember that time my next door neighbour, Benji O'Connell, he was up in the square. I was in the corner. Benji was my chaperone more times on the pitch and off the pitch many a time. So Benji was there, and we won that championship. It was hard fought, and there was great battles even the years before that and the years afterwards with the O'Connells, and Lanlair was one of the teams. There was other teams there was great battles, but that was a great memory. I think I remember drinking about 10 or 12 pint bottles of Coke that night. So there's the memory for you.
I thought you were going to say something else. I thought you were going to say Guinness or Porter or something.
No, nothing. You're mad. I wouldn't have that. Okay.
So you want to, I suppose it's in your nature that you want to test yourself against the best, and you try and get a transfer to the Clans. Is what's that, 85 or 86? A couple of years after that junior win.
That was in 85. I think we went intermediate with the O'Connells. Went intermediate with the O'Connells the following, obviously the year we won the junior, and then we were relegated straight away. And I was trying to progress all right, a bit of success with the CBS, and I had just broken the end of '85 around the old National League used to be played then around October. It was kind of broken into two. The National League used to be played before and after Christmas. So that year, myself, a few other Seamus, Jerry Corrin, a few of us got invited out to the Louth panel. So I just felt at that stage that there might have been an opportunity maybe of a lot of people call it different things, medal hunting and that sort of thing. But all I wanted to do was just play a higher brand of football. Wanted to transfer to the clans. The reason being, a lot of my colleagues who were on the Louth team and that, and growing up, I was very friendly when Louth minor teams, etc. Clans showed an interest. Went to go and made a transfer, and it was blocked, and I kind of just, it was frustrating then, and then an inter-county transfer to Blayney. Fogs came up, and as I said, the rest is history. I started an apprenticeship down in Blayney, which was brilliant. I was very, very lucky that from that point of view, the Blayney team at that stage was certainly, there was quite a few of them with the backbone of the Monaghan team, and their experience and everything was, I think that was probably a turning point in my career. Was, you know, playing with some of the top players in the country, the likes of Nudie Hughes, who I will still be very friendly with, and he's going through health issues at the moment. I wish him well. Eamon McEnany, Declan Flanagan. God, there was numerous of them, you know, and even the level of playing down there, and you know, you're coming up against great teams in Monaghan. That team, Monaghan football was tough, but it was good, and it was beneficial to anyone that was involved, you know, both in Monaghan or the likes of myself, who was you know, late teens, early 20s. You know, it was certainly a great help to me in the 4 or 5 years I was there. And then I moved back to the clans. I got an opportunity of employment then after I finished in the electrical business, and got me moved back to the clans and stayed there 7-8 years. And then in the intervening times, I made my way down to Bourne here. I met a girl down here, so that's where I am at the moment.
That's where you're staying, right? You fairly well, you flew through that career. I'd like to just, in terms of saying you went and it opened your eyes, being with Monaghan and the Fogs. Is that in terms of strength and conditioning? Because you even like, you look back then, you're a big player. You look like a lad that was playing nowadays with the gym programs and all that. Is that what you're getting at?
It probably was. I was probably, and even to this day, I'm not the smallest fella you'll ever meet. Certainly not around the waist anymore. But anyway, it probably was. I was probably just maybe physically a lot stronger, maybe for that sort of age group. I wouldn't be overly tall, maybe near 6 foot, but I was always kind of, well, you know, legs and that I would have been, you know, everybody would have maybe made an issue of these big athletic legs and heavy legs, that a lot of people would have said. But at that time there probably wasn't a whole emphasis on gym work, to be honest. I make no bones about it, Dan. I hated training. Anyone that would have trained when we would have said he hates training, I would have just loved the football aspect of things. You know, long runs, all that sort of thing wouldn't be my forte at all. But the Blayney aspect part of it was more, you're talking about serious experience and just the way that they played the football. You know, they had traditions down there that just went from generation to generation. It was just a continuation. It was just incredible. It was nearly like, if you can maybe multiply the likes of a Cross McGlen sort of club effort, that's the way Blayney was. And
they were kingpins,
you know,
like, yeah.
Yeah, they were really at the top. They were very unlucky that, you know, they won so many Monaghan championships, but they were very unlucky. We were beaten in our Ireland club when we should have won a semi-final after a replay against the Twin Bars.
Yes, yeah.
And they were probably still, to this day, they probably don't know how they never won an All-Ireland club. You know, when other teams, probably not as good as them, have done in those eras, have done better than them. But you need a bit of luck, and they had a serious array of talent. And, you know, for years before and years after, Calverdany would have always had that, you know. But they were just a tradition down there. And I think for me, I joined them in 96, I think it was. Sorry, 86. Yeah. What am I saying? 86, 85, 86, that sort of era. So I stayed with them till 91. I got 5.5 years of experience, like that would have been second to none. So I think strength and conditioning is probably not a word that they would have been used in those years, but certainly from their training end of things. And then I was lucky enough to be, when I was living in Castlebane, then the opportunity came to transfer to Monaghan, and Monaghan's, I would have called it, level of professionalism at that stage was in the late 80s, which was unheard of, I would have thought. You know, you had current doctor in DCU, Dr. Niall Moyna. He was the trainer of the team, then Sean McKay was the manager. But the level of professionalism, and you're talking about 30 odd years ago, was incredible. You know, it was really, really, their detail in training and emphasis on everything was probably on a par with what it is now. So you can imagine that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You can see that they were way ahead. And again, they were unfortunate that, you know, in the couple of years before that, they had some great teams, great clashes with Kerry, tucked into a replay. You know, you're talking about probably Kerry. I still maintain the Kerry team, that team was probably the greatest team that ever played individually. I think the footballing was different. The Dublin team, yes, you have to emulate them, have to congratulate them with 5 in a row, but that Monaghan team would have been up there or thereabouts, and it was great to play on those years with those things experienced and stood to me for years afterwards, you know, and it was incredible, you know.
Are you telling the Louth boys the level of training? You on to Seamus and Jerry Curran? Are you saying, lads, they're training completely different down here?
Yeah, I have to say that, you know, Louth then moved probably. We had a serious bunch of talented footballers down the Louth in the 90s. Then when I came back, so. The training then, you know, if you look at the likes of, it was slightly different because you had to come from, you know, been successful for a few years and then you come back to a different province. Louth was kind of trying to put themselves against the Dublins and Meads at that time. Who, you know, I still maintain that if Louth had to be in any other province apart from Leinster in those years, you know, it's a hard luck story, yes it is, but I think we were good enough in any of the other provinces to win a Leinster or to win a provincial title. We came up against Dublin and Meath. I think in those 90s they were to the fore. They were probably in. I know that Dublin was 95 before they won in Ireland, but certainly the Meath teams. You look at the Meath teams of those years, and they had some fantastic teams. You know, 89, 90, 91 with Dublin and Meath. So later on in those years, or in that decade, you just came up against Dublin and Meath, and we could have done with avoiding them. You know, I think that those sort of years go past, and we had opportunities, and we were just kind of maybe a bit of lack of belief, as much as anything else, probably didn't stand to us. You know, and we kind of didn't. When we got to within 3 or 4 points of a team, we felt we were doing well, where we should have been more confident in saying, well, why can we not beat this team? You know, why are we kind of leaving ourselves short? Which was probably a county thing as well as anything else. It wasn't, you know, an individual thing. I think it was just the mentality that was in the county.
Why do you say that is? Why would you say that, Stefan? Even as a player in that bubble, like you would have had underage success. I know you mentioned a little bit of success at TBS, but you are like you're top of the school game, like, and all those boys come in.
I don't know. It's a difficult one to pin down now because I just would have felt like there was so many of those matches in the 90s that we were either in the game mostly with about 5 or 6 minutes to go, and then it was just it was simple wee things that just, you know, a simple mistake, a couple of chances that we didn't take. Obviously 1 or 2 refereeing decisions didn't help us, but I can't blame referees or any of that sort of thing. You know, I think we had ourselves to blame. I think if you look back at 91 when we beat Kildare and then we played Laois. I think Laois were just waiting for us. I think the hype and all was around Kildare. We had beaten them, and then all of a sudden we were in the shop window, and that was probably the biggest disappointment, because that 91 debacle with Laois was certainly one that at that stage, going into those matches with Laois, we could have had somebody to say, listen lads, we've won nothing here. You've beaten the team so hard, you're in a semi-final or a Leinster Championship, get the feet back on the ground. And I'm not saying that the people involved weren't doing that, but it was just a kind of, I personally felt that we were always going to beat Laois, and it wasn't a confident thing. It was just felt that we were better football. But we took our eye off the ball, and we didn't produce on that particular day, and that was hugely disappointing, you know.
Yeah, we had Frank Lynch on a couple of weeks ago, and well, he didn't talk about 91, but knowing Frank, there'd be no way to be complacency when he was over a team. And what happens with complacency is you don't know until it's too late.
Yeah.
You know, and it kind of
that's right.
And then I suppose the frustration of that results in the row.
Mm.
You know,
it was just disappointing. I wouldn't have in any way, you know, pin the blame on Frank or any of his mentors. I think at the end of the day, no matter what age you are, you're in intercounty footballer. I think complacency set in, and it probably set in the county as well, which is hard because you're looking at tables, reading tables, you meet people that say, "Oh, she's a beat Lee, she's still there in Dublin." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was nobody looking at Lee, and that's the ideal scenario in soccer or in any sport when you're kind of think you have the favourite beaten, and then all of a sudden you're in the favourite's position, and then you know there's only one way it can come down. You know.
I know. I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago on that 91, the row, and I just at the end I made a point that Leash then were swatted aside fairly handily by Meath in the semi-final before they took on Dublin, and we would have beat like the team I went through it. The team we had against Meath's backs, like we would have given Meath a serious rattle.
Oh yeah.
In that 91 side, which is so frustrating. Like, is that one of your biggest regrets in that 91 year or 98?
I think.
Sorry to leave you hanging, but that's what Neighbours EastEnders does. So why not loud and proud? You'll all have to come back next week, but in between, you can go and find go. I think it's GA.E. I'll have the link on the bio. But Stefan is up next in the Borgosh Energy GA Legends Virtual Tour Series. So that's this Wednesday, 22nd of July. So yeah, check it out, and don't forget to tune in to the Loud and Proud podcast next week to find out his biggest regret. We also relive 1991 in supreme detail, high definition detail, in all its glory. We also talk about the clans, the Joe Wards, so much more. And I also put him on the spot as well for his good interesting answer as well. So thanks for tuning in. Contact me and follow me on all social media channels. Subscribe to Loud and Proud podcast wherever you get your podcast. I'll chat to you next weekend for part 2 of the Stefan White meets Loud and Proud series. Bye.
Make no bones about it, Dan. I hated training. Anyone that would have trained when we would have said he hates training, I would have just loved the football aspect of things. Long runs, all that sort of thing wouldn't be my forte at all. But